Welcome back to Midnight Affair Tales. Thank you for joining us. I never expected to hear the words that would shatter my entire world over a quiet dinner. It was a normal Tuesday evening. I had just gotten home from work, exhausted but happy. Emily, my wife of 8 years, had made my favorite meal, chicken parmesan with a side of garlic bread. It should have been a perfect evening, a simple moment of comfort in our routine life in Austin, Texas. But something felt off. Emily was nervous, avoiding eye contact, twirling her fork through her untouched food. My gut twisted. I had seen this kind of behavior before, but never from her. "Jake, we need to talk," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. The way she said it made my heart drop. "Okay, what's going on?" I put my fork down, suddenly losing my appetite. Her eyes flickered with something, guilt, shame, maybe even fear. And then she said it. The words that would ruin everything. "I'm pregnant, but it's not yours." The world around me stopped. The sounds of the city outside, the distant honk of a car, the faint chatter of neighbors, faded into nothing. The air in the room grew thick, suffocating. I stared at her, my brain scrambling to make sense of what I had just heard. "What?" I finally choked out. Emily swallowed hard. "I had an affair." "I'm so sorry, Jake. I didn't mean for it to happen." Didn't mean for it to happen? As if it was some kind of accident? As if she tripped and fell into another man's bed? I felt my pulse pounding in my ears. My hands clenched into fists under the table. I wanted to yell, to demand answers, to make sense of this nightmare. But all I could do was stare at the woman I thought I knew. "Who?" My voice was low, controlled, but full of barely contained rage. She hesitated before whispering a name that made my blood run cold. "Mark." Her coworker. The guy I had met at a few office parties. The guy who always seemed a little too friendly, a little too interested in my wife. I should have seen it coming. I pushed my chair back slowly and stood up. "You've got 5 seconds to tell me why I shouldn't walk out that door right now." Emily's eyes welled up with tears. "Because we can fix this," she pleaded. "Because I still love you. Because I need you to help raise this baby." I froze. "She what?" "Jake, I know this isn't what we planned, but you've always wanted to be a dad. This baby needs a father, and Mark isn't going to be involved. It could still be us." She reached out for my hand, but I stepped back like her touch would burn me. Was she really asking me to adopt her affair baby? To pretend like none of this happened? To take responsibility for another man's child? I took a deep breath, staring at the woman I once trusted with everything. And then, I asked the only question that mattered. "How the hell do you expect me to stay?" Emily's lips parted like she had an answer ready, like she had actually convinced herself that what she was asking of me was reasonable. "Jake, please, I know this is a shock, but we can work through this. You love me, right?" I let out a bitter laugh. Well, yeah, I had loved her. I had given her 8 years of my life. I had trusted her. And she had thrown it all away. "Let me get this straight," I said, pacing the kitchen, hands on my hips. "You cheat on me. You get pregnant with another man's baby. And now you expect me to just raise it like nothing happened?" She flinched at the coldness in my tone but didn't back down. "It wouldn't be like that. It would be ours. It would never be ours." My voice came out louder than I intended, but I didn't care. Emily's face twisted in desperation. "Jake, I know I messed up, but you've always wanted kids. And I love you. Please don't throw everything away over one mistake." "One mistake?" I shook my head, trying to process the sheer audacity of what she was saying. "Did you even think about me when you were with him?" I asked. "Did you ever feel guilty when you came home and kissed me after being in his bed?" Tears rolled down her cheeks, but I wasn't feeling sympathetic. "Jake, I don't want to lose you." Too late. I turned away, running a hand through my hair. My entire life was crashing down, and she was acting like I was the one being unreasonable. Like I should just accept this betrayal and move on. "I need some air," I muttered, grabbing my keys. "Wait, where are you going?" she asked, panic rising in her voice. "Anywhere but here." I walked out the door, slamming it shut behind me. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I needed to get away. As I got in my truck and drove aimlessly through the city, my mind raced. Could I really throw away 8 years of marriage? Was there any part of me that could forgive her? And the biggest question of all, the one that made my stomach twist in knots. Would I regret walking away? I drove for what felt like hours, the city lights blurring as I wrestled with the sick feeling in my stomach. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a betrayal of everything we had built together. 8 years. 8 years of holidays, anniversaries, road trips, lazy Sundays, and late-night talks about the future. 8 years of believing I had found my person, the woman I would grow old with. And now, in the blink of an eye, she had burned it all to the ground. And the worst part? She thought I would stay. She thought I would be weak enough to forgive her. That I would somehow ignore the fact that the child wasn't mine and play house like none of this had happened. I pulled over into an empty parking lot outside an old gas station. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I could almost hear my mother's voice in my head, her words from years ago when I was younger, dumber, and still believed in things like unbreakable love. Son, if someone can betray you once, they'll do it again. And if they don't respect you enough to stay loyal, they don't deserve you. She was right. I couldn't go back. I wouldn't. I pulled out my phone, my fingers hovering over Emily's name in my call list. A part of me wanted to hear her voice one last time, to ask her one final question that had been gnawing at me since she dropped the bombshell. Would she have ever told me the truth if she hadn't gotten pregnant? But I already knew the answer. She wouldn't have. She would have kept lying, kept smiling, kept sleeping in my bed while sneaking around behind my back. That was the final straw. I tapped on a different contact, my lawyer. Hey Jake, everything okay? I need to file for divorce. Tonight. I got back to the house late, but I didn't go inside right away. I sat in my truck for a long time, staring at the home that used to feel like my safe place. Now it felt like a crime scene. Every inch of that house carried memories of a life that no longer existed. I knew Emily would be waiting for me, probably rehearsing some speech about how we could work through this. Maybe she even thought I'd change my mind after cooling off. She was wrong. I finally stepped out of the truck and walked inside. As soon as I did, Emily rushed toward me, her eyes red and swollen from crying. Jake. Thank God, I was so scared you weren't coming back. I didn't respond. I just walked past her, straight to the bedroom and pulled out a suitcase. What are you doing? She asked, her voice trembling. I didn't even look at her as I started throwing clothes into the bag. Jake, stop. Please, let's talk. We already talked, I said flatly. She grabbed my arm, forcing me to look at her. Her face was full of desperation, regret, and panic. I love you, she whispered. I laughed. A cold, hollow laugh. You don't love me, Emily. You love the idea of me. You love what I give you. But you sure as hell didn't love me when you were screwing Mark. She winced like I had slapped her. Jake, I swear it didn't mean anything. I was stupid. I was selfish. But I can make this right. I zipped up my suitcase and finally looked her in the eye. You can't fix this, I said. And I don't want you to. Her face crumbled, fresh tears streaming down her cheeks. But what about us? I shook my head. There is no us, Emily. Not anymore. Her hands trembled as she reached for my arm again, but I pulled away. I was done. I grabbed my bag and walked to the front door. I could hear her sobbing behind me, but I didn't turn back. Because I knew something she didn't. This was the last time she would ever see me. I was walking away for good. Some men take back their cheating wives. Some men forgive. But I wasn't some men. Emily had made her choice, and now it was time for me to make mine. I didn't just leave that night. I made sure I left with my dignity and everything I legally had a right to. Emily thought she had ruined my life, but she had no idea what was coming. Because while she was crying over the husband she lost, I was busy ensuring she'd feel the consequences of her betrayal for a long time. I had already spoken to my lawyer, and as it turned out, Texas wasn't exactly kind to cheating spouses in divorce proceedings. I filed for divorce under adultery, which meant she had no grounds to fight for spousal support. Our house. In my name. She'd have to move out. My investments? Protected. Our mutual friends? Not so mutual anymore. But the final nail in the coffin? I made sure everyone knew the truth. I didn't go out of my way to tell people, but when they asked why we were divorcing, I didn't sugarcoat it. I told them word for word what Emily had done. Her coworkers started treating her differently. The people we knew together? They cut ties. Even her own family was disappointed in her. And as for Mark, the man she ruined our marriage for? He ghosted her the second he found out she was keeping the baby. I didn't need to do anything to get revenge on him. He was already a coward. One night, a month after I left, Emily called me. I didn't answer. Then she texted, "Jake, I need you. Please talk to me." I stared at my phone for a long time before typing back, "You made your choice. Now live with it." And then I blocked her. She had expected me to break, to beg, to be the fool who stayed. Instead, she was the one left with nothing. And me? I walked away like a man who knew his worth. Dear good audience, if you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have stayed and tried to forgive, or would you have walked away too? Let me know. The first few weeks after leaving Emily were strange. It wasn't just the loneliness. I could handle being alone. It was the sudden shift in my entire reality. One day I had a wife, a home, and a routine. The next, I was waking up in a small apartment downtown, eating takeout, and wondering how the hell I had been so blind. The worst part? The mornings. I would wake up and, for a split second, forget everything. Then it would hit me like a punch to the gut. She cheated. She got pregnant. She expected me to stay. And now, I was here, piecing my life back together while she was probably still in our house, still sleeping in our bed, still carrying the child of a man who didn't even want her. But the more time passed, the stronger I felt. I didn't miss her. Not really. I missed the version of her I thought existed. The woman I had built a life with, the woman I trusted. But that woman was a lie. One evening as I was finishing up at the gym, my phone buzzed. A text. From her. "Can we talk? Please?" I stared at the message, debating whether I should just ignore it. But something in me, maybe the part that still wanted closure, told me to hear her out. So, against my better judgment, I replied, "What's there to talk about?" She responded almost instantly. "Just meet me. One last time." We met at a small cafe downtown, the kind of place we used to go to on lazy weekends. It felt weird sitting across from her, knowing that this woman, the same one who had once been my best friend, my partner, my everything, was now just someone I used to know. She looked different. Tired. Like the weight of her choices had finally started crushing her. "You look good," she said softly, stirring her coffee. I didn't return the compliment. She didn't deserve it. "What do you want, Emily?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. She exhaled sharply, like she had been holding in something heavy. I just wanted to see you. To talk. I miss you, Jake." I clenched my jaw. "You miss me? Or you miss what I gave you?" She flinched, her fingers tightening around her cup. "I deserve that," she admitted. "But I swear, Jake, I never wanted to hurt you. I was stupid. I was selfish. I regret everything." "You don't regret cheating," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You regret getting caught." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Just indifference. "I know you won't believe me," she whispered. "But I still love you." I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "You don't love me, Emily. You love the idea of me. You love the stability I gave you, the loyalty, the commitment. But love? Love isn't cheating. Love isn't lying. Love isn't expecting someone to raise another man's child just to keep your own mistakes from ruining your life." She sobbed into her hands, but I didn't offer comfort. That wasn't my job anymore. "So what happens now?" she finally asked, her voice small. I stood up, tossing a few bills on the table for my coffee. "Now?" I said, looking down at her one last time. "Now you live with the choices you made. And I move on." I walked out of that cafe feeling lighter than I had in years. That was the last time I ever saw her. Walking out of that cafe felt like the final nail in the coffin of my old life. No more hoping. No more wondering if I had made the right choice. No more thinking about Emily and the mess she had created. I was done. But being done with her didn't mean I had everything figured out. I had spent so many years building my world around Emily, our plans, our routines, our future. And now, for the first time in nearly a decade, I was alone. At first, it felt like freedom. I could go wherever I wanted, do whatever I wanted, and I didn't have to come home to someone who had betrayed me. No lies. No pretending. Just me, my own choices, and my own life. But then, there were nights when I'd sit in my new apartment and feel the weight of it all. The anger. The disgust. The questions that still haunted me. How long had she planned on keeping this secret? What if she had never gotten pregnant? Would she still be lying to me? Did she even love me at all, or was I just the safe, stable option? I didn't have answers. And I was done looking for them. Instead, I focused on one thing: rebuilding. I hit the gym harder than ever, not just to stay fit but to release the rage that still simmered under my skin. I threw myself into work, staying late at the office, chasing new projects, anything to keep my mind occupied. And then, I started saying yes to things I had ignored before. Guys' nights out. Weekend trips. Trying new things. Living. For the first time in years, I wasn't a husband. I wasn't someone's partner. I was just Jake. And I had to figure out who that even was. I should have known it wouldn't be that easy. One night, about 3 months after I had left Emily, I was out with some coworkers at a bar downtown. It was one of those high-end places, dim lighting, expensive drinks, the kind of place where successful people pretended they weren't completely miserable. I was laughing, actually having a good time, when I felt it. A shift in the air. A presence. And when I turned my head, there she was. Emily. She wasn't alone. She was with a friend, some girl I vaguely recognized from her office, but she was looking right at me. Our eyes met, and for a second it was like time stopped. She looked different. Thinner. Tired. Almost hollow. She had always been the type to command attention when she walked into a room, but now? She just looked lost. I turned back to my drink, pretending I hadn't seen her. But I could feel her eyes burning into me. And then she walked over. Jake. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant. Like she knew she had no right to speak to me but couldn't help herself. I didn't look at her. "How have you been?" she asked, shifting nervously. I sipped my drink, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make her uncomfortable. "Good," I said finally. "Better, actually." I heard her sharp inhale, like the words had physically hit her. "Jake, don't," I cut her off, finally turning to face her. "You don't get to do this. Not here. Not ever." She blinked, her eyes glassy like she was holding back tears. I just wanted to say I'm sorry again. I know it doesn't matter, but I mean it. I messed up. And I miss you." I stared at her for a long moment, studying the woman who had once been my entire world. The woman I had planned a future with. And then, finally, I spoke the only truth that mattered. "I don't miss you." Her breath hitched. "Jake." I shook my head. "Go back to your table, Emily. We're done." She stood there for another second, waiting, maybe hoping I'd soften. That I'd take it back. I didn't. Finally, she turned and walked away. And as I watched her go, I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. No regret. Just peace. This was just the beginning of my new life. Emily was a ghost now, just a memory of a lesson I'd never forget. I was finally free. The moment Emily walked away that night, something inside me finally clicked. I had spent months carrying the weight of her betrayal, letting it fester in my mind. But now I was done. She was nothing but a chapter one had already finished reading, a lesson learned the hard way. That night, for the first time in a long time, I actually felt free. I didn't need closure. I didn't need answers. And I sure as hell didn't need Emily. So I did what any man who had finally taken his life back would do. I started living. I said yes to more nights out. I took trips. I reconnected with old friends. I focused on building myself into the kind of man who would never be blind to betrayal again. And then one night everything changed. It started like any other evening. I was at a bar with a couple of buddies, just enjoying the night, when I noticed her. She wasn't like Emily. Not even close. Where Emily had been calculating, this woman was effortless. She laughed with her friends like she didn't have a care in the world, completely unaware of the attention she was drawing. And when our eyes met, there was something different about her. Something real. I wasn't looking for anything serious. Hell, after what I had been through, I wasn't even sure I wanted to trust again. But for the first time in a long time, I felt something new. Curiosity. And when she smiled at me, I knew I was about to step into something completely different. Her name was Sarah. She wasn't overly done up, didn't try too hard. She was just herself. I like that. You've been staring at me for a while, she teased, swirling her drink in her hand. I smirked. You gonna pretend you haven't been looking too? She laughed, a real genuine laugh. Nothing fake. Fair enough, she admitted, leaning forward. So tell me, Jake, what's your story? My story. Where the hell was I supposed to start? I could have told her about the betrayal, about the divorce, about the wreckage Emily had left behind. But for the first time in months I realized something. That wasn't my story anymore. That was just a chapter. So instead I smiled and took a sip of my drink. Why don't we start with something easier? I said. Tell me why a woman like you is still single. She raised an eyebrow, amused. A woman like me? Yeah. Smart. Funny. Beautiful. Either you've got some deep dark secret or men around here are just idiots. She laughed again, shaking her head. Well, maybe I just don't settle. I like that answer. A lot. We spent the rest of the night talking, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about the past. I wasn't thinking about Emily. I wasn't thinking about revenge or betrayal or the pain I had carried for so long. I was just there. And damn, did it feel good. This was the start of something new. Not a replacement for what I had lost, but a reminder that life moves forward, if you let it. Life had finally started feeling normal again. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was living. I was going to the gym regularly, excelling at work, and actually enjoying my time with people. For once, my thoughts weren't consumed by Emily's betrayal. And Sarah? She was different. I wasn't rushing into anything, but the more time I spent with her, the more I realized she was the kind of woman Emily could never be. She was honest, straightforward, and had this quiet confidence about her. I wasn't sure where things were going, but I knew one thing: I wasn't looking back. Until my past decided to crawl back into my life. It started with a missed call. Emily. I saw her name on my screen and immediately ignored it. I had no reason to pick up. She was my past. But then she called again. And again. And then a text. Jake, please pick up. It's important. I sighed, gripping my phone tightly. I should have blocked her months ago, but a part of me had kept that door open. Not for her, but maybe for some form of closure I never truly got. I waited a few minutes before finally replying. What do you want, Emily? 3 dots appeared. She was typing. Then. It's about the baby. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. I had spent months trying to erase her from my life, and yet here she was, pulling me back into the very thing that made me leave. I could have ignored her. I should have. But something inside me, maybe curiosity, maybe something darker, made me text back. What about it? Her response came quickly. It's not Mark's. Jake finally closes the door, the weight of everything hitting him all at once. He takes a deep breath, feeling lighter, but just as he starts to move on, a new email notification pops up on his phone. The subject line stops him cold. Jake, I need to tell you something. It's about the baby. I sat there staring at my phone, my heart pounding in my chest. It's not Mark's. What the hell was she talking about? Emily had sworn the baby belonged to Mark. That was the entire reason she begged me to adopt it. I clenched my jaw. There were only 2 possibilities here. She was lying, again. There was another man. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. But against my better judgment, I called her. She picked up on the first ring. Jake, thank you for calling me back. Please, I need to explain. You've got 2 minutes, I said coldly. She hesitated, like she wasn't expecting me to be this indifferent. Like she still thought she had some kind of hold over me. It wasn't just Mark, she finally admitted, her voice small. There was someone else. I closed my eyes, trying to push down the rage that was bubbling up inside me. So you weren't just cheating with one guy, I said. You were sleeping around. And now you don't even know who the father is? It's not like that, she cried. I was confused, I was lonely, and I made mistakes. But Jake, this is serious. The baby could be yours. I laughed. A bitter, hollow laugh. You expect me to believe that? After everything? I can get a paternity test, she said desperately. Please, Jake, if there's even a chance, don't you want to know? I could hear the fear in her voice. She wasn't just calling me because she missed me. She was calling me because she was terrified. Terrified that the other guy, the one she had betrayed me for, wasn't going to step up. And now she wanted to drag me back into the mess she created. I don't want to know, I said flatly. Jake, please? No, Emily, I snapped. You don't get to do this. You don't get to ruin my life, lie to me, throw our marriage away, and then come crawling back when it all falls apart. She was silent, probably realizing just how badly she had screwed up. If that baby is mine, which I highly doubt, you made damn sure it would never be my problem. You chose this. You chose them. And I chose to walk away. But what if? Goodbye, Emily, I said. And this time I meant it. I hung up and blocked her number. I wasn't going to let her drag me back into her chaos. I had walked away once. And I would do it again. Emily had lost everything. Her affair partner was gone. The truth about her baby was messy. And now, she had to face it alone. Me. I was finally free. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking back. Blocking Emily's number felt like the final piece of the puzzle, the last step in cutting her out of my life completely. And damn, did it feel good. For months, she had been a lingering shadow in my mind. Even after I walked away, her betrayal still haunted me. But now she was just a mistake I learned from. I threw myself into my new life with even more focus. Work. I was killing it. Promotions were being discussed, and I was getting more recognition than ever. The gym? I was in the best shape of my life. Friends? I was reconnecting with people I had lost touch with while I had been drowning in my toxic marriage. And Sarah? She was still in the picture. We weren't anything serious, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for something real yet. But she was different, easy to talk to, fun to be around, and she didn't come with a pile of betrayal and baggage. For the first time in years, I felt like I was in control of my own life. But just when I thought the past was finally behind me, Emily found another way to crawl back in. It started with an email. A subject line that made my blood boil. Please, Jake. One last time. I should have ignored it. I should have deleted it the second I saw her name. But curiosity got the best of me. And when I opened the email, I knew she wasn't done trying to ruin my life. The email was long, full of pleading, regret, and desperation. Jake, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I need you to read this. Please. Just once. I took the paternity test. The baby isn't Mark's. It isn't the other guy's either. It's yours. I gripped my phone so hard my knuckles turned white. There was no way. There was absolutely no way. I know you won't believe me, and I don't blame you. But I have proof. I'll send you the results if you want. I need to talk to you. Please, Jake. This is your child. And they deserve a father. I stared at the words, my mind racing. This had to be another manipulation. Another lie. And yet, a small part of me, the part that still remembered the years we had spent together, wondered if it could be true. What if she wasn't lying this time? What if the baby was mine? I stood up, pacing my apartment. I had spent months cutting Emily out of my life, rebuilding from the ashes she left behind. I had sworn I was done with her. But if there was even a chance that this child was mine, did I have a right to walk away completely? I didn't know. And that was the worst part. Emily had destroyed everything. But now she had given me something I never expected. A choice. One I never thought I'd have to make. I couldn't sleep that night. Emily's email kept playing in my head over and over again. This is your child. And they deserve a father. I wanted to ignore it. To push it away like I had done with everything else tied to her. But no matter how much I tried, this wasn't something I could just forget. Because if she was telling the truth, that meant I had a kid. A child I had never asked for. A child I had been lied to about. A child who had come from a situation I wanted to erase from my memory. But none of that was the kid's fault. That was the part that twisted my stomach into knots. I wasn't the kind of guy who could just walk away from his own blood. But I also wasn't about to let Emily drag me back into her mess. I needed proof. So the next morning, after hours of debating with myself, I responded. Emily, send me the results. That's it. No meeting. No talking. Just proof. If you're lying, don't ever contact me again, ****. A few hours later, an attachment popped up in my inbox. I opened it, scanning the document with shaking hands. And there it was, staring me right in the face. 99.9% probability. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. I wasn't sure whether to scream, punch a wall, or just sit there in complete disbelief. Because no matter how much I hated Emily, the baby was mine. I don't know how long I sat there just staring at the results. Felt like some cruel joke. For months, I had been so sure I was done with Emily, that I had escaped the nightmare she created. But now I had a permanent connection to her. And no matter how much I despised her, there was a child in the middle of this. A child that didn't ask to be born into this mess. I had a decision to make. I could ignore it, pretend I never saw the results and go on with my life. I could fight for custody. Take the kid and make sure Emily had no control over them. Or I could let Emily raise them alone and just be a distant figure in the background. None of the choices were easy. None of them felt right. But I knew one thing, I couldn't just do nothing. So, against every instinct telling me to stay away, I texted Emily. "I'll meet you. One time. That's it." We met at a small cafe, the same one where I had told her goodbye months ago. She looked different this time, tired, hollow, drained. Like the weight of everything had finally caught up to her. Good. She deserved it. "Jake," she said softly when I sat down. "Emily," I replied, my voice cold. For a moment, she just looked at me like she was searching for some part of me that still cared. But that man was gone. "Thank you for coming," she said finally. I didn't respond. I just folded my arms and stared at her. Waiting. She swallowed hard. "I know you don't trust me and I don't blame you. I screwed up. I lied. I ruined everything." "You did," I agreed. "So why the hell should I believe anything you say now?" She flinched like she hadn't expected me to be so blunt. "Because this isn't about me anymore," she whispered. "It's about our child." Our child. The words felt foreign. "And what exactly do you expect from me, Emily?" I asked, narrowing my eyes. "Do you want me to just jump back into your life? Play happy family? Raise this kid like none of this ever happened?" Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't care. "No," she said quickly. "I know we're over. I know I lost you forever. But Jake, this baby, they're innocent. They didn't ask for any of this." I sighed, rubbing a hand over my face. She wasn't wrong. But that didn't mean I knew what to do. "What do you want from me, Emily?" I asked again, my voice quieter this time. She hesitated, then said the one thing I never expected. "I want you to have custody." I froze. "What?" "I can't do this," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I thought I could, but I can't. Every time I look at this baby, I see everything I did wrong. And I know I don't deserve to be their mother. But you do." I sat back in my chair, completely stunned. This was not what I expected. "You're saying you want me to take full custody? Just like that?" She nodded. "I'll sign whatever I need to sign. I need to fix at least one thing I broke. And maybe giving you this child is the only way." I stared at her, searching for any sign of manipulation. But for the first time in a long time, she looked truly broken. And maybe, just maybe, she meant it. I didn't say anything for a long time. Because now I had another decision to make. I sat there, staring at Emily like she had just spoken in a foreign language. She wanted me to take full custody? Just like that? I had spent months cutting her out of my life, building something new for myself, and now she was handing me something that would tie us together forever. A child. My child. "You really expect me to believe this?" I asked, my voice cold. Emily exhaled shakily. "Jake, I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I know I don't deserve your trust. But I can't do this. Every time I look at this baby, all I see is my mistakes, my failures. I thought I could be strong enough to be a mother, but I'm not." I studied her face carefully, looking for a sign of manipulation. But she wasn't playing some game this time. For the first time since she had destroyed our marriage, Emily looked completely broken. "So what, you're just giving up?" I asked. "You lied about everything. You tried to trap me into raising another man's kid. And now that you know the truth, you just want to dump the responsibility on me?" It's not like that, she insisted, tears welling in her eyes. Then tell me what it is, Emily. She was silent for a moment, then whispered, you would be a better parent than me. I clenched my jaw, anger and frustration colliding in my chest. This wasn't how I wanted to become a father. I had dreamed of having a family someday, but not like this. Not through betrayal. Not through lies. So you're just walking away? I asked. You're really okay with never seeing your child again? She wiped at her face, sniffling. I don't deserve them, Jake. And I don't want to ruin their life the way I ruined ours. For a second, I didn't know if I wanted to scream at her or just walk away and never look back. But I couldn't. Because the child she was abandoning? That was mine. 2 weeks later, I found myself sitting in a lawyer's office, papers in front of me. Emily had followed through. She had signed over full custody, giving up all legal rights to the baby. It was surreal seeing it in writing. Once you sign this, it's done, my lawyer said. You'll have full custody. Emily will have no legal ties. She won't be able to change her mind later. I swallowed hard, staring at the papers. This wasn't how I imagined becoming a father. There was no excited announcement, no happy planning, no moment of celebration. Just a messy, painful reality that I hadn't asked for, but now had to face. Jake, are you sure about this? My lawyer asked. I looked up at him, my mind flashing back to everything that had led me here. The betrayal, the divorce, the months of rebuilding myself. And now a child. My child. I wasn't going to abandon them the way Emily had. Yeah, I said firmly, picking up the pen. I'm sure. I signed my name. And just like that, Emily was gone from my life for good. Raising a child on my own wasn't going to be easy. But at least now I had something real. Something pure. Something that Emily could never take away from me. The future. Bringing my child home for the first time was surreal. I had spent months trying to erase Emily from my life, and now I was holding a part of her in my arms. But as I looked down at the tiny face staring up at me, I realized something. This wasn't about her anymore. This child was innocent. They didn't choose any of this. They didn't ask to be born into a broken situation, caught between a mother who abandoned them and a father who never saw them coming. But I was here now. And I wasn't going anywhere. That first night I barely slept. Not because the baby cried, but because I was overwhelmed. Could I do this? Could I really be a father on my own? But as I sat there in the dim light of my apartment, rocking them gently in my arms, I made a silent promise. I don't know what I'm doing yet, I whispered. But I swear I'll never leave you. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about Emily. I was thinking about the future. Our future. The first few weeks were a blur of exhaustion and learning. I had never changed so many diapers in my life. Formula schedules, sleepless nights, crying at all hours. It was overwhelming. But I didn't regret it. Not once. This baby, my child, was worth it. Every sleepless night. Every early morning. Every sacrifice. Sarah had been around, helping when she could. She never pushed, never acted like she was trying to step in where Emily had left off. She was just there. And I appreciated that more than I could ever say. One night, after finally getting the baby to sleep, Sarah and I sat on my couch, both drained. I don't know how single parents do this, I admitted. I feel like I'm barely keeping up. She smiled softly. You're doing better than you think, Jake. I wasn't sure if that was true, but for the first time, I started believing I could do this. And that was enough. The nights were still long. The exhaustion was still heavy. But something had changed. I was no longer just surviving, I was learning how to live again. Raising a baby on my own was the hardest thing I had ever done. The sleepless nights, the constant second-guessing, the overwhelming fear that I was doing something wrong, it never went away. But I was figuring it out. And through it all, Sarah was there. She never pushed. Never overstepped. Never acted like she was trying to replace something missing. She was just there. Steady. Supportive. A quiet presence when I needed it the most. One evening, after an especially difficult day, I sat on the couch, completely drained. My kid was finally asleep, but my body felt like it had been through a war. Sarah was in the kitchen, packing up the takeout container she had brought over. She had been doing that a lot lately, showing up with food, offering to help, never asking for anything in return. I leaned my head back, closing my eyes. I do not know how single parents do this. She laughed softly, walking into the living room. You are doing it? I let out a dry chuckle. Barely. She sat down next to me, pulling her legs up onto the couch. No, really, Jake. You are doing better than you think. I turned my head to look at her. She meant it. There was no pity in her eyes, no forced sympathy. Just honesty. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to believe her. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the hum of the baby monitor filling the room. Then she spoke again, her voice softer this time. Do you ever think about, I do not know, moving on? I exhaled, running a hand over my face. Moving on from what? She shrugged, tilting her head. From everything. The past. The pain. Emily. I tensed slightly at the mention of her name, but I did not look away. Yeah, I admitted. I think about it. But thinking about it and actually doing it are two different things. She nodded as if she understood exactly what I meant. You do not have to rush. Healing is not supposed to be fast. I smirked. You sound like a therapist. She grinned. Nah. I just know what it is like to be stuck in the past. I studied her for a second. It was the first time she had ever hinted at her own scars, her own history. Yeah? I asked. What were you stuck on? She hesitated, looking down at her hands. Someone who did not appreciate what he had. Someone who thought I would always be there, no matter what. I frowned. Did he cheat? She shook her head. No. But he never chose me either. I was just there. A convenience. Someone he knew he could fall back on. But I deserve more than that. I felt something tighten in my chest at her words. She deserved more. And maybe I did too. I took a slow breath, looking away. I have spent so much time being angry. At Emily. At myself. At everything. I do not even know what moving on is supposed to look like. She smiled slightly. Maybe it looks like this. Letting people in again. Even if it is just a little at a time. I met her gaze, and for the first time I let myself really see her. Sarah. The woman who had been quietly showing up for me, expecting nothing, giving everything. Maybe she was right. Maybe healing was not about one big moment. Maybe it was about small ones. Like this. Letting someone in. Even if just a little. That night, after Sarah left, I stood by my kids' crib, watching them sleep. For the first time in a long time, the past did not feel as heavy. For the first time, I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was something waiting for me beyond the pain. Life had settled into a rhythm. Diapers, feedings, late-night rocking, exhaustion. Repeat. It was hard. Harder than I ever imagined. But I never once thought about giving up. Every time I looked at my child, I saw something Emily never could. A future. There were nights I felt like I was failing, but then I'd hear the tiny soft sound of my baby breathing, safe in my arms, and I knew. I was exactly where I was meant to be. One night, after a long day at work and an even longer night of teething screams, Sarah showed up with food. You need to eat, she said, handing me a plate. I looked at her, exhausted. I need sleep more. She smirked. Then eat first, and I'll watch the baby while you take a nap. For the first time in months, I let someone help me. And damn, did it feel good. Sarah wasn't just there. She was showing up. She never overstepped, never acted like she had a right to be part of my mess, but she was consistent. And that meant more than I could ever explain. One evening, after finally getting my kid to sleep, we sat in silence on the couch, sipping coffee. I don't know how you do it, she finally said. Raising a baby on your own? I exhaled. I don't know how I do it either. She smiled softly. But you do. And that's what matters. For the first time, I let myself wonder. Could this be something real? After everything, could I actually trust someone again? I didn't know. But I was willing to find out. Just when I thought I had finally escaped Emily, she found a way back into my life. I was getting home from work one evening when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it, until I saw the message. Jake, it's me. Please, I need to talk to you. Emily. My stomach twisted. I had buried her, cut her out completely, and yet here she was. I should have ignored it. But I didn't. because a part of me needed to know, why now? Why, after all this time, was she reaching out again? And what could she possibly want? I stared at the message on my phone, my grip tightening. Emily. I hadn't spoken to her in months. Ever since she signed away her rights, she had vanished. No calls, no emails, no drama. And now, out of nowhere, she wanted to talk? My first instinct was to block her. Delete the message and pretend I never saw it. But something about the way she worded it, I need to talk to you. Not, I want to, but I need to. Was she in trouble? Was this another manipulation tactic? I had no reason to give her the benefit of the doubt. No reason to believe anything she said. And yet, against my better judgment, I typed back. What do you want, Emily? I waited. A minute passed. Then another. And then, finally, 3 dots appeared. It's about the baby. Please, Jake. Just meet me once. I felt sick. She had no claim to my child. None. She had walked away, given up, chosen to disappear. So why the hell was she trying to come back now? I clenched my jaw, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I had a choice. Ignore her and let her stay buried in the past. Or meet her and get answers. Deep down, I already knew what I was going to do. I needed to face her. One last time. We met at a small diner on the edge of town, the kind of place where no one asked questions. When I walked in, Emily was already there, sitting in a booth near the window, fidgeting with her hands. She looked different. Not the polished, confident woman I once knew. She looked worn down, tired, like the weight of her choices had finally caught up to her. Good. I sat down across from her, keeping my face blank. You have 5 minutes, I said coldly. She swallowed hard. Jake, cut the bullshit, Emily. What do you want? Her face crumbled for a second, but I didn't care. She had lost the right to my sympathy a long time ago. She took a deep breath. I made a mistake. I laughed. A short, bitter laugh. That's an understatement. She winced. I shouldn't have given up the baby. My entire body tensed. What the hell are you saying? I asked, my voice dangerously low. She looked down at the table, guilt all over her face. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought you could give them a better life. But Jake, I miss them. I can't stop thinking about them. I want to be part of their life. My hands curled into fists under the table. You don't get to decide that now, Emily. You signed away your rights. You made your choice. And now you have to live with it. Tears filled her eyes. I know I have no right to ask for anything. But please, Jake, just let me see them. Just once. I leaned forward, my voice low and sharp. Do you have any idea what it was like to pick up the pieces after you left? Do you know how many nights I stayed up, terrified I wasn't good enough to be a father? Do you understand what it means to commit to something, to be there every single damn day even when it's hard? She sniffled, nodding weakly. No, you don't, I interrupted. Because you ran. And now you think you can just walk back in? Like nothing happened? Like you didn't throw your own kid away? Jake, please, she whispered. I just want to see them. I stared at her, my mind racing. Could I really trust her to stay away if I said no? Would she try to take legal action? Could she actually fight me in court? I had full custody. But still, she was their biological mother. And that scared the hell out of me. That night I couldn't sleep. Emily's words kept playing in my head, over and over again. I just want to see them. Did she? Or was this just another way to get control over me? I didn't trust her. Not even a little. But the truth was, this wasn't about me. This was about my child. And one day they would grow up. They would have questions. Where's my mom? Why don't I have one? Did she love me? And when that day came, what the hell was I supposed to tell them? That she abandoned them? That she didn't care until it was too late? I didn't want to lie. But I also didn't want to let Emily back in just to destroy them the way she destroyed me. So I made my decision. The next morning, I sent her a text. You get one visit. That's it. You don't tell them who you are. You don't confuse them. You don't make promises you won't keep. One visit. And then you leave. Forever. It was more than she deserved. And part of me hated myself for even giving her that much. But deep down, I knew. This wasn't about me anymore. It was about protecting my child. no matter what it took. The day of Emily's visit felt like a storm was coming. I had spent the entire morning second-guessing myself. Was I making a mistake? Was I opening the door for trouble by letting her see our child? But the reality was this was temporary. One visit. Then she was gone. Sarah had offered to be there for support, but I told her I needed to do this alone. This wasn't about her. This was about me, my child, and the past I was finally facing. When Emily arrived, she looked nervous. She was holding a small stuffed bear in her hands, her fingers fidgeting against it. I had never seen her so uncertain. "Are they inside?" she asked, her voice soft. I nodded but didn't move. "Remember the rules, Emily. No lies. No promises. You're a stranger to them. That's how this has to be." She swallowed hard and nodded. I led her inside. The moment she saw them, our child, my child, her breath hitched. Tears welled up in her eyes. "They look just like you," she whispered. I felt my jaw tighten. "I know." Emily sat on the floor watching as the child played, laughter filling the living room. She wasn't trying to insert herself. She wasn't forcing anything. She just watched. And that scared me more than anything. Because for the first time in years I saw the old Emily, the one I used to love. The one I had married. And for a second, just a second, I saw regret in her eyes. "Jake," she said quietly, glancing at me. "I never realized how much I lost until now." I clenched my fist. "Too late." "You lost them the second you walked away," I said coldly. She nodded, wiping at her eyes. "I know." The child ran up to me, hugging my leg. I picked them up instinctively, pressing a kiss to their forehead. "Daddy. Look what I made," they said excitedly, holding up a toy castle. Emily flinched at the word daddy. Because she wasn't mommy. She was nobody. And she knew it. After an hour I checked my watch. "Time's up, Emily," I said. She looked like she wanted to argue, like she wanted to beg for more. But instead she just nodded. She stood up, brushing her hands against her jeans. "Thank you," she whispered. "For this?" I didn't respond. I walked her to the door. She hesitated, turning back one last time. "Jake." "No." I cut her off. "We're done, Emily. This was your last chance. Now leave." Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. Then, without another word, she walked away. I watched her get into her car, drive off, and disappear down the street. And for the first time since she had ruined my life, I felt nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Not regret. Just peace. Emily was finally gone. For good. Days passed. Then weeks. Then months. Emily never reached out again. She was truly gone this time. And my life. It had never been better. Raising a child alone wasn't easy, but every day I got better at it. Every late night feeding, every scraped knee, every sleepy goodnight daddy made it all worth it. Sarah was still in my life, but we were taking things slow. She never tried to push, never tried to act like a replacement for what was missing. She was just there. Steady. Reliable. Honest. And that meant more than I could ever explain. One night, as I was tucking my kid into bed, they looked up at me with sleepy eyes. "Daddy, do I have a mommy?" My chest tightened. I had been waiting for this question. I sat on the edge of the bed, brushing their hair back gently. "You have me," I said softly. "And that's never going to change." They nodded, satisfied, closing their little eyes. And for the first time, I knew I had made the right choice. Emily was the past. This was my future. One evening, I was standing in the kitchen watching Sarah play with my kid, laughter filling the room. Something shifted inside me. For so long, I had built walls around myself, afraid to trust, afraid to let anyone get too close. But Sarah? She had never left. She had been there when I was drowning. She had been there when I was lost. And now she was here, laughing, playing, fitting into my world like she had always belonged. And in that moment, I knew. I wanted her to stay. Forever. That night, after I put my kid to bed, I sat with Sarah on the couch, holding her hand. "I never thought I'd trust someone again," I admitted. "But you proved me wrong." She smiled softly. "I wasn't trying to prove anything, Jake. I just wanted to be here for you." I took a deep breath. "Then be here forever." Her eyes widened. "Are you?" I pulled a small box from my pocket, my heart pounding. Will you marry me? For the first time in years, I was choosing love on my own terms. Sarah covered her mouth, tears in her eyes. Then she whispered the word that changed everything. Yes. The day I married Sarah, it wasn't just about us. It was about everything we had survived. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the painful lessons that had nearly destroyed me. But more than anything, it was about the future we were choosing together. Standing at the altar, looking into her eyes, I knew I had finally found something real. No lies, no betrayal. Just love, trust, and a life we were building together. I, Jake, take you, Sarah, to be my wife, my partner, my best friend. She smiled, squeezing my hands. And I, Sarah, take you, Jake, to be my husband, my partner, my best friend. When we kissed, I heard cheers, laughter, and happiness. But the only thing I felt was peace. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking back. I was looking forward to it. And damn, did it feel good. Years passed. Life moved forward. Something I never thought was possible back when I was drowning in betrayal, back when Emily's affair had shattered my world. But now I was standing in my backyard watching my wife and my child playing in the warm summer sun, laughter filling the air. Sarah wasn't just a part of my life anymore, she was my life. And my child? They never had to know the pain their mother caused. They never had to feel unwanted, unloved, or like they were just a mistake. Because I chose them. I chose to step up. I chose to fight for something better. And in the end, I won. Emily? She never came back. She stayed in the past exactly where she belonged. Maybe she regretted it. Maybe she didn't. But honestly, I didn't care. Because I had everything I needed. A wife who loved me without lies. A child who would never feel abandoned. A life that was finally whole. And most of all, I had peace. And nothing, asterisk asterisk, not betrayal, not the past, not Emily, asterisk asterisk, could ever take that from me again. The journey ends, but the message remains. Betrayal is painful, but walking away is powerful. Choosing yourself is the strongest move you'll ever make. And in the end, you don't just survive, you thrive. If this story hit you deep, if it moved you, if you felt every single emotion along the way, now it's your turn. Like if you felt the power of this story, comment your thoughts. What would you have done? Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more stories that make you feel something real. The journey was long, the pain was real, but the ending? Worth every damn second. Thanks for being part of this ride. Until next time.